Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Great is the PNM, and it shall prevail.
Battle for our nation, your life matter, yeah. We leadership, we promise you forever more. For PNM and everything will be much better, yeah. Strengthen on 95 years of government. Never again will.
On August 10th, without a doubt, performance will beat Old Talk, and St. Anne's East will be back in the competent and caring arms of Dr. Nyan Gadsby Dolly. And I want to remind you, Trinidad and Tobago, of Dr. Gadsby Dolly's message tonight. Not to leave representation to chance. You have to choose a party that is up to the task of carrying the responsibility of leadership. And you have to know that your vote is much more valuable than $300 and much more valuable than certainly unkept promises from the other side. So let's hear it one more time for Dr. Dolly. So Trinidad and Tobago, tonight, you are able to rally at home, to rally right, and to rally safe. And we are safe because our next speaker has gone above and beyond, has faithfully and wisely steered the Ministry of Health throughout completely uncharted waters. He remains focused, determined, decisive, and polite amidst challenges, amidst delusional detractors, and amidst the naysayers and political opportunists who are trying to make a pandemic into political football. Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM could not offer the people of St. Joseph a better PNM candidate. So on August the 10th, St. Joseph will stay safe with Terrence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome an emerging national hero, Mr. Terrence Deyalsingh.
We're red and ready. We're red and ready. We're red and ready. We are the people's national movement, movement for development. Place where every creed and race will always find an equal place. So when you vote with confidence, no distractions from opponents. Put your finger by the body, say vote PNM election day, because great is the PNM. Great.
Thank you very much, Laurel. Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, political leader of the People's National Movement, and prospective candidate for Diego Martin West and the next Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Dr. the Honorable Nyan Gadsby Dolly, Minister of Community Development, Culture and the Arts, and candidate for the electoral district of St. Anne's East, my sister. Mr. Jason Williams, JW, the candidate, the winning candidate for Barataria San Juan, left radio and now he talking a different talk. Minister Donna Cox, my partner in crime at the COVID press conferences. Sister, I love you. I love you. Mr. Anthony Roberts, the chairman of the San Juan Laventille Regional Corporation. And JW, I see you have your cheering section here tonight, boy. Very well. I have a brief tonight. Prime Minister asked me to report on health. But I am going to take a little liberty. I will report on health, but I'm going to report to you on health from a position of thanksgiving and giving thanks. First of all, I would like to give thanks to God and Creator and my Savior Jesus Christ. The past 5 years that He has given me have been the most productive of my life. Secondly, and even before I thank the Prime Minister, I would like to thank my wife. My wife of 37 years, who is here with me tonight. Right here. Then I would like to thank my Prime Minister for giving me the honor to serve in his cabinet as the Minister of Health. And lastly, I would like to thank the people of St. Joseph for the signal honor of being their representative for 5 years and for giving me the honor to serve. Because what we do in public life is serve. Health is an awesome responsibility. An awesome responsibility. You are responsible for the lives of 1.4 million people. Think about it. Who would want that job? I hear people say, not me. You have the third biggest budgetary allocation of $6 billion to spend. That is the size and enormity of this task. But we could talk about money, but the question is, how does that money filter down to where it is needed? The man and woman on the street who depend on this free public health service, which we only now recognize is one of the best in the world. We only now recognize that. And for that, my thanksgiving again, I want to thank every single nurse, every single doctor, every single wards maid, every single ambulance driver, every single security guard, every single CEO, every single healthcare worker, because you have shown the world what Trinidad and Tobago is. Ladies and gentlemen, let us go back to the ugly days pre-2015. We're having a conversation. Anybody in the audience tell me what was the biggest health crisis facing Trinidad and Tobago? Anybody? Call it out, shout it out. You see, all you forget. That is my wife, eh? Infant mortality, but more importantly, maternal mortality. When we came into office, women were dying in our hospitals, giving birth by the 10s, by the 14s, by the 8s, by the 9s. Babies were dying, what you call neonates. A neonate is a child that you're born now within 28 days of life. Neonates were dying at the rate of 15 children per 1,000 births. Yeah, I hear people say, oh, good. But because we have been successful, you have forgotten about those dark days. Because the People's National Movement fixed that. You don't hear about it again. And let me tell you the numbers. The same way Oxford University judged us as #1 on COVID, the United Nations sets countries' targets to hit. So we were supposed to hit certain targets for maternal mortality and infant mortality by 2015, called the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, for maternal mortality and infant mortality. But here what? We missed them. We passed it straight. Then they set what is called Sustainable Development Goals to be hit by 2030. They gave Trinidad and Tobago certain targets for women not dying in hospitals and neonates not dying to be hit by 2030. Well, hear what? Your government, led by this Prime Minister, who approves every single note sent to him, including the setting up of the Directorate of Women's Health, we hit our targets by 2018, 12 years early. But what does that mean for you and the man on the street? It means that every year, between 6 and 10 women who you know, your sisters, are now alive. because they're not dying by the 10s and 12s in the hospital giving birth. It means that 100, yes, 100 children per year are now alive because we dropped neonatal mortality rates from 15 per thousand to now 7 per thousand. We cut it by 50%. And now, under Dr. Rowley, we have to get those targets even lower. But I need the population to help me out in this. One of the reasons we cannot drive maternal mortality rates down lower is this. Too many women who use and depend on the public health system present too late for their first medical checkup when they are pregnant. 40% of the women in our system come only in the second and third trimester. It means we cannot track their diabetes. They have uncontrolled high blood pressure. We need to track them. So I am appealing, if we have to drive those figures down, we need more women to come earlier. That is what we have done. We are a world leader now. As I give thanks again, non-communicable diseases, commonly called NCDs, Trinidad and Tobago is a hotbed. Everybody have diabetes, hypertension, we too, cancers. Let me tell you what this government has done on the NCD front. Our children, we have a pediatric children diabetes, obesity problem. I went to the cabinet. Dr. Keith Rowley, as chairman of the cabinet, approved a note to ban the sale of sugar drinks in schools. Do you know what that has resulted in? Let me give you the figures. It has resulted in a 20% reduction in the number of soft drinks children are now drinking. What does that mean for the long-term health of our children, the future of tomorrow? They will live longer. They will live a healthier life. Healthier children, healthier adult. So the PNM is the right choice not only for mothers in the hospital, babies in the hospital. PNM is the right choice for our school children. Take that. Let us talk about cancer for a minute. Let's show if I ask everybody here, put up your hand if you know somebody with cancer. Let me see your hands. Almost every hand has gone up. We adopted, through cabinet notes, a program of early cancer screening, cancer treatment, and we opened the new LINAC in St. James 3 weeks ago. But what will make the difference to your lives is early cancer screening. That is, get tested to know if you have cancer, and the earlier we catch you, the better we could treat you, the better quality of life you will lead. Listen to these figures. In 2015, when we came in, there were 24,495 cancer screens done in Trinidad and Tobago. 2019, hear what? It went up to 41,879. That is a 71% increase. We screened 17,384 more people. We did more with less. So when we say the PNM is the right choice, that is the right choice. We did more with less. And we did that with no corruption. Just what? Performance. Do you want that to stop? Do you want that to continue? Good. Go back to 2015 again. Time machine. Let me go back. Outside of maternal mortality and infant mortality, what was the next biggest issue facing especially the lower income people in Trinidad and Tobago? Anybody could remember? You can't remember because we solved it. Something called CDAP. Almost every citizen depends on CDAP for free medication to manage the hypertension, the diabetes, the asthma. Do you know what the last government did in the last year before the election? They took up the dispensing fee for CEDAP. So if a prescription have 5 items on it, and they take it to the pharmacy used to get $8 to dispense every item. So if you have 5 items, they get 8 by 5, $40. They took that up to $13. But you couldn't get drugs. You know what we did? We reduced that fee to $8 and we pumped those $5, $10, $15 million into what? Into drugs. You realize now you don't hear about CEDAP? Because you fix it. You fix it. Very few complaints. That is what this government did in the health sector. Another initiative which we launched. Everybody here has somebody, a granny, a uncle, man in the street, who always want what surgery for their eyes? Cataract surgery. Cataract surgery. Somebody who can't see or seeing blurry, walking down steps and falling down, the elderly. They need their cataract surgery and they need it free, and they need it when? They need it now. In 2015, we were doing 2019 cataract surgeries. But here what used to happen? They used to farm out a lot of it to the private sector and pay for it. I say, we're doing more with less. We're bringing it back into the hospitals. And by 2019, we did 3,500. We increased it by 23%. That's an extra 652 cataract. There's hundreds of people now have the gift of sight. The gift of sight, their quality of life. So for the elderly, like the children, like the cancer patient, who is the right choice? The People's National Movement. Ladies and gentlemen, before I talk about other issues, one of the most significant policy decisions this cabinet took, and I'll show you if I ask again, I'm not going to ask because nobody will guess it. One of the most significant policy decisions this government took, and unless you have a relative with this condition, you will not appreciate what I'm about to say. That is, how do we deal with the vexing issue and the stigma and discrimination that goes with the whole issue of mental health? You see, mental health is like you have a child or something you don't like, you just shove it in a corner and don't come out, you shove it in a cupboard, you lock it away. That is how we used to deal with mental health. We have been talking about revolutionized mental health in Trinidad since the 1960s. We took a note to cabinet about decentralization of mental health, and the process has started. But I want the process to continue after August 10th, 2020. Therefore, the only person who could do that is who? Dr. Keith Rowley and his cabinet. Decentralization of mental health is a priority area. It is transformational. And we are going to stop calling it mental health because that alone is stigmatizing. It will now be called behavioral health wellness services. And with that, we could change the way we deal with things like schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. This is a key program that we have to keep going. Because the person, it's like diabetes. If we catch you too late, we have to amputate your leg, right? Hypertension, if you catch you too late, difficult to treat. But if we catch the person, just like early cancer screening, early in the development of mental issues, the outcome is better. And when we decentralize, they go back into the communities, into the bosoms of their families. The plan has to continue, and the government of Dr. Keith Rowley will continue that, I am sure. So that is what some of the $6 billion was used for. Those are the policies that this government attended to. But there's a lot more to be done. Let's turn our attention now to infrastructure, hospitals. Because unless we talk hospitals, nobody thinks we talk in health, right? Trinidad and Tobago has about 3,000 hospital beds across our system. But that is due to be increased by about another 500 to another 600 in the next couple of years. Let me explain. Arima Hospital will be operationalized by the end of the month. 150 beds. 150 beds. We built it, we financed it. Point Fortin Hospital to be operationalized by the end of the month. 100 beds. We built it, we financed it, and between those two hospitals, we saved the taxpayer $500 million in UDCOT fees alone. We ain't touch a square foot of space. Ask yourself the question, where was that $500 million in UDCOT fees were going? We did more, and we did more, and we did more, but with less. The new Sangre Grande Hospital, we turned south for that last year. Let Dr. Rowley open that in 2021, please. The new Central Block, successive governments totally abandoned that project and pretended the danger to life and limb didn't exist. I took the note to the Prime Minister, the Cabinet. 540-bed tower is going up now as we speak. I want Dr. Rowley to open that in 2022. The Linac, which Dr. Rowley opened 2 weeks ago, $84 million for cancer. Diego Martin Health Center. So if you want health to progress, the right choice is who? The People's National Movement. Only you have the power, as my colleague said. If you don't vote and exercise your franchise, how will these things continue? COVID, as we talk about Thanksgiving, I am giving thanks tonight. I am not giving thanks for COVID, but I'm giving thanks for the leadership of Dr. Keith Rowley in treating with COVID. It is said often that disasters show up character. That is what COVID did to this country. It showed the character of my political leader, my Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. It reached the point where the Blavatnik School of Government, which is a school of Oxford University, one of the top universities of the world, judged Trinidad and Tobago #1 in the world to come out from its lockdown because of the leadership of this man to my right here. But let me tell you what it means. They look at countries and they assess you on certain parameters with a maximum score of 1. We got 0.8 for testing, tracing, and isolation. 0.8 out of 1 is fabulous. We got 0.9 for community understanding, the way Dr. Rowley led us in talking to the people, in communicating to the people. And I have to thank my colleague again, Senator Cox, who was by my side for all these press conferences. But we scored a perfect 10 or a perfect 1 in this area. Management of imported cases and control. Listen to that. The way we managed how cases came into the country, how we controlled it, Trinidad and Tobago got a perfect score of 1. Do you want that to continue, or do you want someone who promised to just open the borders, open the bars, take you to court because a rum shop closed? That is what you want? You are going to risk the future of Trinidad and Tobago on that? COVID-19 taught us a lot of things, but it taught us about the mettle of the man called Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley. He deserves a second chance because COVID ain't finishing on August the 10th. On August the 10th, when you wake up on August 11th, COVID is still around. August the 12th, COVID is still around, eh? But those who want to unseat this government are telling you, open the borders, no problem. Open the bars, no problem. It is the sunshine that will save you. We say no. We say absolutely no. So ladies and gentlemen, that is my thanksgiving for health. But I must give thanks now to St. Joseph, a community that I have served faithfully now for 7 years. I want to thank Minister Nyan Gatsby-Dolly. We are building the community center in Cayman. Thank you. I want to thank you for refurbishing the Curepe Community Center. Thank you. I want to thank you for starting the long-awaited My Tower Community Center. Thank you. I'm giving thanks. I want to thank you for taking down that big canvas that the contractor who was building the Mount Hope Community Center, for those of you that facing the Eastern Main Road, the contractor put up a big canvas about 1,000 feet wide and 1,000,000 feet long, begging the UNC to pay him to finish the community center. Remember that? Who paid and who finished it? Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly. Thank you. Thank you very much. We want to thank St. Joseph for the new police station, the railings, the pathways, the bridges. But I want to warn the people of St. Joseph. I want to warn the people of St. Joseph. Think back to 2013 for the by-election. Kamla Persad-Bissessar and Ian Allen started 23 projects in My Tower, Quarry Drive, Quarry Road, Cayman. They started 23 projects to fool people for voting for Ian Allen. The day they lost that by-election, you know what they did? They passed and picked up all the material. They're done. They're done with St. Joseph. Nothing for you. We want continuity because we have more work to do. And we want 5 more years to finish off all that infrastructure. 5 more years. We have more work to do. The last thing I want to talk about in St. Joseph is this. As an MP, as Dr. Rowley is an MP, Nyan is an MP, and JW will be an MP. Yes, he will be an MP. The number one issue people come to you for what is housing. Somebody asked me, what are we doing about low-income housing in our town hall meeting I had? So let me see. In St. Joseph, the PNM built East Grove under Dr. Keith Rowley, who was the Minister of Housing. We built Pioneer Courts. We built Breezy Heights. We built Sunrise Courts. The UNC stopped North Grove because they don't want housing in St. Joseph. We are now building Mahogany Courts, 160 units for middle-income people. You have an income of between $7,000 to $12,000 a month. That is for you. But let's come down the income scale. We just launched in Pioneer Drive the Small and Medium Contractors Initiative in Pioneer Drive. So it's a pioneering project in Pioneer Drive. What are the benefits? The benefits are not only housing, you know, but the contracts go not to the big fellas, the contracts go to the small man, so they can get a piece of the pie. The small, so it nurtures small businesses. And those units will cost about $500,000. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. So you know who could aspire to that? The nutsman, the tradesman, the plumber, the gardener. So that's low-income housing. But the most, as I close, the most important housing development in St. Joseph is not low-income housing. You know what it is? No-income housing. All looking confused. Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley and his cabinet started a program in Moruga, where once you have a plot of land, ownership of land, you could swear it in the affidavit, the land is yours. The government will build a house for you to the value of $120,000 all you need to put in is your sweat equity. I will give you one example. Because you see, if you are 70 years old, if you are 60 years old, you cannot qualify for what? A mortgage. TTMF, no bank giving you a mortgage. If you are unemployed, I have one man in St. Joseph, and he went public so I could say it. Visually impaired, 73 years old. He had this plot of land. We put up the house, hurricane specifications, earthquake specifications. Dr. Rowley, that man took me on a tour of his house. And he was bursting with pride. At 73 years old, cannot see that he now owns a house. That is why we are the right choice. We believe in equity. Equity. That is what we did for St. Joseph. So my advice for you this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, as I finally give thanks, my address of thanksgiving, I thank the Almighty, I thank my wife, I thank my political leader, and I thank the good people of St. Joseph, and I ask you, on the night of August 10th, when you re-elect the People's National Movement in St. Joseph, when you re-elect a PNM government, when you give Dr. Keith Rowley a second term, we will all rise and say what? Great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail. Thank you very much.
We're ready. We are the People's National Movement, movement for development, place where every creed and race will always find an equal place. So when you vote with confidence, no distractions from our road.
Trinidad and Tobago, Barataria San Juan. Terrence de Alsing is a man who has served his constituency well and who has impressively handled his ministerial portfolio. The women, the children are safe with Terrence. Trinidad and Tobago, we are safe with Terrence. And St. Joseph, let me remind you, those of us in our viewing and listening audience, that you are excessively safe with Terrence de Alsing. So let's hear it one more time for our Minister of Health. And ladies and gentlemen, permit me please to ask you to give some love to the Honorable Donna Cox, the Minister of Communications, who was a part of that team that continues to lead the fight against COVID in Trinidad and Tobago. So, Trinidad and Tobago, this election is about what happens next to us as a people. This election will define the country's direction for the next 5 years. This election is not just about some haphazard plan and some ill-conceived notion about work something. This election is about who you trust to execute a solid plan. It is about whose proven track record lays the foundation for a safe and secure future. It is about who can reshape our economy and who can truly build a new society for us here in Trinidad and Tobago. So tonight, Trinidad and Tobago, I present a tried and tested true leader, a man of vision and precision, a man who puts national interest above all else, a man who on August 10th will enter his 9th term as the parliamentary representative for the people of Diego Martin West, and a man who on August 11th will, for the second time, take his oath of office as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This is the right time. He has the right plan. He has the right track record. He is the right leader. He is the right choice. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the true champion of Trinidad and Tobago, Dr. the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Even though
Good night, Barataria. My cabinet colleague, the Member of Parliament for St. Joseph and our Minister of Health, the Honorable Terence Dale Singh, the Member of Parliament for St. Anne's East, mentoring the next Member of Parliament for Barataria San Juan, Mrs. Nyan Gatsby Dolly, the next Member of Parliament to occupy the bench in Parliament for Barataria San Juan, the young, the vibrant, the intelligent, a man of service, Jason Williams, JW, PNM's JW, Barataria San Juan is coming home to the PNM. Barataria has been sleeping out for too long. Barataria is coming home to meet St. Anne's East, Laventil, Diego Martin, San Fernando, Tobago, Sangre Grande, Tunapuna, and all the other PNM constituencies on election night. Because we by our constitution have screened aspirants for office, and we've selected what we consider to be the 41 best candidates. We have amongst our group experience, we have youth, we have women of quality and class, and we have the vibrant new people like Jason Williams, who will come to the Parliament to strengthen the PNM and the country and to give young people a place in the decision making of this country. Welcome to the PNM's line. Well, I must say that normally 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out from an election, you know what we do in the PNM? We'd be out in the road in our thousands. We'll be out at rallies. We'll be out in large numbers at every venue. Tonight, we are in here, our numbers reduced, our minds focused on the period of difficulty and danger that we are engaged in, that we are involved in, because this is the pandemic of 2020. The last time there was a pandemic in the world was in 1918, almost 102 years ago. But in those days, they hardly understood what was happening to them. And because of the fact that they didn't understand what was happening, they worsened their own situation. I don't know if you all know, we have a tradition, I don't know about Trinidad and Tobago. When a person dies, the last thing that happens to the person is that they give them a bath. You have to bathe them before you dress them up and put them in the coffin. You know that? You can imagine in a pandemic where people are infectious, people are dying like flies, and as fast as they die, they're handling them and bathing them and so on. And what was happening is that the people who were doing that on Monday, by Friday they were sick, and by the next Monday they were in the coffin. That's how it went. They did not know the nature of the danger they were dealing with. Fortunately for us here in 2020, with a virus that is of a similar nature, science has taught us a bit more, so we're handling it a little better, but we still don't know everything about it. We are still learning about this virus. Today I was monitoring the southern United States numbers, and you know what's coming into the hospitals in those southern states now where they're breaking records? Is that a huge amount of young people. Remember when we started out, they were saying, well, it's really the older people who are the ones in danger and the ones with underlying health conditions. Well, now in beds in hospitals in Houston and in Alabama and in Mississippi, a lot of young people are coming down with this virus, and many of them are dying in the process. So we still don't know enough about it to be confident, to expose ourselves to it. But in Trinidad and Tobago from early, we decided that we knew enough to take it seriously. We knew enough to pay the price to protect ourselves. The price is high, but the highest price to pay is a life.
And we paid those prices and we're still paying it. As a matter of fact, as political leader and leader of the country, I'm paying the price now of being accused of being harsh and brutal and heartless to people on the outside. I simply say to those on the outside, we are doing the best we can to get you home. And if we could have brought all of you home tomorrow, we will. But the circumstances don't permit it. And common sense tells us to keep managing the inflow. Today, in order to incite the public, our political opponents published that Minister Sinanan's daughter and her dog came in on a flight while people outside are suffering and can't come home. That is the kind of thing that you expect from the UNC. But of course, look at how many people who read that would be hurt and be angry because they now know something that is against their principle. They're not concerned about that. All they're concerned about is that if the person gets sufficiently upset, they will vote against the PNM. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you that while we are engaged in the same exercise, there's a huge difference between the PNM and the UNC. Huge difference. We're all competing for office, but we are different, and different on the basis of how we govern and what principles govern us. We are different on the ground of principle. You remember when the UNC was in office, managing the same country? They had 10 ministers less than this government. Everybody in the government was a minister, and every one of them, bar maybe one or two, who came late for the bus, acted as prime minister. The country was a plaything for the prime minister. So every Monday morning as she jumped on a plane, pick up her gin and tonic, or whatever she was drinking, vodka and whatever, she left somebody else in charge of the country. I want to ask you all, the people of Trinidad and Tobago, given the kinds of challenges that we have had to face since September the 9th until now, from money for 3 days, to no ferry for Tobago, to COVID in January 2020. Suppose I was managing this country by leaving the country every Monday morning and leaving another person in the cabinet to practice, take a tush as prime minister. Do you expect that we would have been able to have managed our situation in the way we have? In fact, they were so sure that we would do what they were doing, that from the first year, inside of the first year, they started campaigning saying, oh, the government has collapsed. The government is going to collapse, the government collapsed. We are ending our term in 3 weeks, and we have stayed the course, we have kept the faith, and we have served this country well. But you all must know that if you are a person of principle, principle is not convenient. It has to be principle on Monday, principle on Friday, principle for you, same thing for me. Let me take you down a little road to understand what we are doing to be different and show that we are different. Today I went down to Moruga. I went down to Moruga today to take delivery of and to open the first agro-processing park in Trinidad and Tobago. The first park that's the business on that industrial estate is agro-processing. You would think that governments that have come out of the agricultural sector, because the UNC, the ULF, they usually got their support and the MPs and so on coming out of the rural communities. You would have thought that with all the talk about agriculture in this country, and they know the farmers personally because they are their constituents in many instances, that somewhere along the way, with all this talk about diversify the economy, diversify the economy, diversify the economy, they have one on a radio station. Every time we take a drink of rum, we ball out diversify the economy, and the government is not diversifying the economy. Take another drink of rum, and he's saying it over and over and over, with the most hateful tone in his voice. But you would have thought that those MPs and that those prime ministers of that ilk and era would have done something that they could point to and say, that is what we have done to give agriculture the ability to expand and do more in our economy, and that is what diversification is. You do more outside of the oil and gas. You don't rely so much more on the oil and gas. Let oil and gas continue to prosper, of course, but keep doing other things and doing more. Today we opened the first agro-processing park in the Deep South, in an area where all the farmers from the southern coast can now produce, and not just produce, but produce in large quantities, because the buyers of the large quantities say, listen, we want to take local product as against importing, but we can only commit to doing that if you are going to produce enough to give us all we want every time we want it. So the farmers are now incentivized to produce, and to produce in large quantities. And because it's an industrial park, manufacturing of industrial produce, moving the produce from cocoa beans to chocolate, moving it from fruits to fruit juice, and you can package it and protect it, give it a longer shelf life, serve the rest of the country, and export it. Because if you see how beautifully packaged these things are, it makes you want to use them. That is how you increase agricultural production. So as of today, this PNM government could point to that investment of $90 million as an investment to increase agricultural production, to provide opportunity for people in rural districts, and to increase our food production and improve our food security. That's what we have done. But it's not only that. And you know, you will hear them saying, it is for elections. We do that for elections. Well, my answer to that is this. If it is that you could think that what we are doing is for elections because you think it's something good, and you think that people are going to vote for it because it is something good, and we're proud of that. It didn't happen yesterday or the day before. It took us 2.5 years from the concept of doing it, finding the land, preparing it, awarding the contract, and it took the contractor a year and a half to build it. It has just been completed, and we are proud to hand it to the people of Moruga today, election or no election. And that's not the only thing we've done in agriculture. We have gone out to Aripo, just east of Arima, where there is 1,200 acres of land, which has been there since the early 70s, being used as livestock production station, called the Aripo Livestock Station. Government come, government go. In recent times, that station was only managing to produce and handle 200 head of cattle, with 160 workers. But that is not how you produce and improve production. And we didn't want to go and spend more government money in that deep hole. So what we did, under public-private partnership, we advertised the property and all its facilities and said to the private sector in open, come and give us a proposal if you are interested in doing agricultural production there. We got 2 proposals that were serious, 2 big ones. The Ministry of Finance under the PS of Finance chaired a committee that evaluated the 2 and recommended to the cabinet a local company which is the largest livestock producer in small ruminants in Pinal, and they won the bid to get that land to continue to produce. They are now engaged in a multi-million-dollar expansion in production on the site since last year September, aiming to have not 200 head of cattle but 1,000 head of cattle. And when they do that, they will double the milk production in this country, so that Nestle, instead of importing 90% of its milk, might only import 80% or 70%. And the more they do that, the more other farmers will produce, and Trinidad and Tobago will produce more and more milk and import less and less milk. That is what diversification is about. And that is what food security is about. And that is what saving foreign exchange is about. There are 2 projects we can point to in this term alone. We can also point to the fact that we set out and did produce 1 million pieces of planting material, forestry and food crop farming, from orange to teak. We just, at the nurseries, kept producing planting material, because if you don't produce planting material, you can't plant, you can only talk about planting. That's what we do. And of course, when we closed down Caroni in 2004, one of the things we did is that we said to the Caroni workers then, those of you who want to go into agriculture, we will make available to you 2-acre parcels of land. And we did so to many former Caroni workers. But the lease had a clause that if you had to dispose of it, you had to get permission from the government after a certain period of time. That was because we wanted the land. If you get it for farming, then you use it for farming, and there was some control. We didn't just want to give you a piece of land to get rich for your son and your grandson. We wanted the land to go into agricultural production. It was no longer in sugar, but there are lots of other agricultural things that you could have done. You know what Kamala Prasad Bisasa did when she came into government? She removed that constraint. She removed that having to get permission to sell. And therefore they could sell the land at will. And they have been selling the land at will. And they've been getting rich at will, have nothing to do with agricultural production. So when you hear them talking, that is their record. Instead of encouraging agriculture on the agricultural land, you facilitate the sale. So they're all involved in real estate. A lot of businessmen have bought up those 2-acre parcels. Many of them are using them for housing and other issues, everything else except agriculture. Because farmers are few and far between. We are trying to encourage young people to get involved in agriculture, so we make agriculture tax-free. Whatever you earn is all yours. Pay no tax on what you earn in agriculture. That's the best incentive that could happen in this country. But you see, when these things happen, you really don't see a distinction between one government and the other unless you look very closely, because they pretend to be. Pretend. One of the most important things that happened in this country since I became Prime Minister and for the last 5 years is that the government respected institutions and strengthened institutions. At no time during the last 5 years can you point to a single instance where the government of Trinidad and Tobago under my tenure used the parliament to facilitate its friends to escape the court, to escape the judiciary. Who thought up, built, practiced, and executed Section 34? Where is the equivalent to Section 34 in this government of the last 5 years? Let me remind you what Section 34 is. Section 34 was a time when the financiers of the then ruling party, the UNC, had to go before the court after they fought and fought and fought. And they lost and lost and lost the cases, and they were just about to be brought before the court to answer for corruption at Piarco Airport that took place under our UNC government. Hundreds of millions of dollars were stolen up there, and these local people were supposed to go to the court. They had American associates who took part. They were charged in America. They were jailed in America. They turned state witness in America. But in Trinidad and Tobago, the government of Trinidad and Tobago came to the parliament, changed the law, deceived the parliament, created a clause that said that if you were charged more than 10 years ago, you could escape the court, and did that in a way to fool the independent senators and the government. And on Independence Night, when we were all watching fireworks and celebrating our anniversary of independence, they proclaimed the law. Even though on the record in Parliament, they told the Parliament that they will not proclaim the law until another 2 years or how much, when they build the courts, so that you can have a different court system and so on and so on. Proclaim it secretly on Sunday night. And Monday morning, Let me repeat and remind you, they proclaimed the law secretly on Sunday night, and Monday morning, those people, instead of going before the court to face the court and have the day in court, they were in court demanding their right to go free. It was so scandalous that the shame was too much to bear. They had to come back to Parliament the same week and change the law. You all forgot that? Tell me when any such thing happened under this government. Our institutions were under threat. The Parliament was abused, and of course, they were evading the judiciary. They want to come back to do just that because they have not changed. The Bible says, you know, the Ethiopian cannot change his skin, nor the leopard its spots. And have the gall in some document they just put out to put in there that they'll be building regional courts. The same regional courts they were supposed to build before Section 34 blindsided us with these regional courts and tell us when questions were put to them in the Parliament, will this change in the law have any effect on the cases that are before the court? They said no, because it will not be proclaimed in the very near future. And then they go to the court and tell the judge something else. And up to this day, their friends and associates have not faced the dock in the court to answer. That is what they represent. We are not like that. The PNM is held to a higher standard, and we are proud of that. We had screening recently in the PNM. One of my colleagues, who has been charged for an offense that is supposed to have taken place in 2004. Remember that? The offense was supposed to have taken place in 2004. And eventually, my colleague was charged by the police. We have the PNM, we are very straightforward. Anybody, if you get yourself charged by the police for a criminal matter, you cannot be considered as a PNM candidate. That's what it is to the PNM. I was in the Parliament when my colleague Eric Williams and my other colleague Frankie Khan, on information taken to the Parliament by the opposition, by Kamla Prasad Bisesa, information which turned out to be faulty and untruth in the end, but they were charged by the police. And the minute they were charged, what happened, people? What happened to Eric Williams and Frankie Khan? They had to give up their positions, because under the PNM, the standards of this country are, you cannot be on a criminal charge and be acceptable as a people's spokesperson and managing public business. But today, you here in Trinidad, you know, talk to any UNC person in Trinidad, and they will tell you how much they're banking on Watson Duke and Tobago to win the Tobago seats that they are funding. So they only put up 39 seats in Trinidad, but they have 2 seats in Tobago, Watson Duke. A man on a criminal charge for rape. And he is so out of place, a man, that the PNM's Women's League, standing on PNM principle, where we need nobody's permission, we are going to be borne out. We are going to be absolved in the PNM on our history and our record. Because our history and our record will show that we don't encourage people with criminal difficulty to go to the Parliament. And when the PNM Women's League come out and say that, Watson Duke, their proxy in Tobago, associates the PNM with the vilest of this government, that the PNM Women's League is a Ku Klux Klan. You know what the Ku Klux Klan is? And that is his response, thinking that he will scare us away, scare the PNM woman away from saying to people in Tobago, that is not good enough. We can say that because that is our record. The UNC can't say that. They're funding him in Tobago, but they didn't have to go quite Tobago, you know. they had Ram in Mayaro, chairing the Mayaro Corporation while he was on a charge for corruption. And you know what the answer was? Was only $2,500 the man said he took. So they have a ceiling or a floor limit on how much corruption is corruption. I can tell you about the differences because I felt their pain. You know, JW is going up against a candidate here in Barataria. The minute the candidate was named, the candidate lifestyle and his personal life became an issue here in Barataria. We hardly know the man. It's not the PLM talking. They know him, they're talking about the man's personal private life. And to my shock, I realized that there's hope for Mrs. Kamla Persad-Bissessar. I didn't think there was. But the fact that she could learn that people's private lives and their family life and their family arrangements are out of bounds tells me that there's hope. All of a sudden, your private life and your family life is out of bounds for Kamla Persad-Bissessar. That is good. So her candidate will continue his private life, whatever it is. But let me ask you all something. Is that the same Kamla Persad-Bissessar who led Vanilla Allen Toppin and Moonlal into the parliament to call my dead and deceased father, God rest his soul, a rapist in the parliament? And got Wade Mark, that Wade Mark. He was in the speaker's chair. He allowed them to blow up the picture of a house, and came inside our parliament and showed the world the house in which a member of parliament, the opposition leader, raped somebody. You remember that? And today, all of a sudden, private lives and private living are out of bounds. If God was like man, his lightning will strike. But you see, I raise this so that you all could understand that in the election campaign, you will hear a lot. And coming from persons whose records bear no relation to what they're offering you, you need to know that there's something called character, and character matters. You would have heard about Paris. Remember? She spent a whole year. But interestingly enough, I must be one lucky prime minister. I spent 5 years in the parliament. The most difficult 5 years in the history of this country. And did not have to face a vote of no confidence once. The most powerful tool for an opposition in the parliament is the vote of no confidence. I faced a vote in the parliament as opposition leader. It was the only time in the history of the Commonwealth where such a motion was filed. It was filed by the then Prime Minister, Kamla Persad-Bissessar, to expel the opposition leader because she got some letter from somebody in the Integrity Commission that told her that she was exonerated from Emailgate. That letter was so toxic coming from the Integrity Commission that it resulted in members of the Integrity Commission resigning from the commission. You all forgot that? The letter that caused the deputy chairman of the Integrity Commission to resign because he was handling that matter and he didn't know where that letter came from and he didn't support it, so he resigned. But Kamla Persad-Bissessar came to the parliament with it and moved a motion to expel the leader of the opposition because the letter purports to exonerate her. And so being exonerated, she now felt that I should be expelled from the parliament. I was expelled from the parliament. Digger Martin West had no voice in the parliament, but they couldn't expel me from the post of opposition leader because they eventually had to pay me, because they haven't got a leg to stand on. But that person who could file a motion like that, the only time in the history of the Commonwealth that such a motion was ever attempted was in Australia 100 years before, and the Speaker did not allow it as a proper motion. And that has been the standard of the Commonwealth ever since, until Kamla Persad Bissessar did it in Trinidad and Tobago, to become the first Prime Minister to move a motion in a parliament to expel the opposition leader. They just call me dictator. I ever do anything like that in this country? Have you ever seen me do anything like that in this country? Even attempt it? She spent a year, while not filing a motion of no confidence in me, or a vote of no confidence in my government, if it was so bad. I mean, if you hear them, I don't expect them to praise me. I understand the maxim that a prophet is not without honor except in his own country. I don't expect them to acknowledge the good things that are happening in this country in a difficult period. That is not their job. As a matter of fact, one opposition leader from that party said his job is not to make the government look good. They are afraid that the government would look good. But she spent a year attacking Faris. Relentless attack. And she's angry about the use of taxpayers' money because Faris rent a building to the government. Let me read something for you all from 2013. And what I'm reading from an article that was on a CNC3 program in 2013, when the Mark bus, I think it was 2017 in Mark bus, that a minister of government, minister of transport, had so helped himself to a good life that he had questions to answer. This minister was the minister responsible for transport. So he was responsible for the ferry service between Trinidad and Tobago, the port. In that ferry service, in all of government, there are some engines, some German engines that are on the ferries that do the water taxi and other ferries for the country. And it turned out that while that minister was Minister of Transport, he has a business that does light and power generators. Turned out, not by any announcement on this part or announcement by the government, a Mark bus, that minister's business had become a partner, a beneficial partner to a foreign company that had the business of servicing those engines. I'm not talking about $1 million here, $2 million. Between 2013 and 2017, the fee paid by the port to that arrangement, that group, was $42 million, with the minister being a sleeping partner in there. When that became public, listen to what the minister said. The company, SVF, which is the foreign company based in Curacao, SVF came to Trinidad and were interested in getting another company to partner with. They had the pick of the field. They did their own investigation and chose Tropical Power. End the story. A company came looking for another company to partner with. They just happened to find the company that is under the Minister of Transport, and they just happened to partner with the Minister of Transport company. They got the pick of the field. I didn't hear a word from Kamla Persad Bissessar about that. I simply want to ask you all, if that was a PNM minister, what would have been the position of Kamla Persad Bissessar and the media and others in this country? This was published, what I just quote for you there was a published statement by the minister, They came to look for a partner and they find me. I'm the best. But when Faris had an empty building in Port of Spain for rent, and the government ministry went, look at the building and come to the government and say, we would like to rent that building, and the building was rented on terms even more favorable than the market. She spent a year making couture. Spent a year making manima. Lying, misrepresenting, multiplying numbers, and giving the impression that Faris had done something. She even called for his resignation. She even called for his resignation. And interestingly enough, there were other people who would stand with her on that. But you must remember the story of the Pied Piper. Follow me. Not interested in the facts. But how come it was important to ignore KDs? Because the foreign company come and look in his ministry and find that 42 million between 2013 and 2017. You think KD is stupid? Pull some coffin in front of the Red House. Keith Noel 137, when they left office, was 400 dead, but you pulling no coffin then. But the joke about it, that those German engines were known and are known to be the first in class. So when they get up to become a partner to the company that's servicing them, they're good for life. The 2 new ferries that we are building now coming down here, it's more than likely that they're going to have those engines in there. Millions to maintain them. The Garland Passage came from nowhere. Has those engines in there as well. So if you're in the cabinet and you could see around corner and pick you the best in class, and they have nothing to say about that. You know why? Because they hold the PNM to a higher standard. If I or anybody in a PNM government had been so lucky to be picked as best in class in that arrangement, all like no so, they didn't finish calling our names. They like to talk about procurement. When they were in office, there was a breakdown in the public service. It reached the point where permanent secretaries were going on vacation with paid for by a minister. You all forgot that? You think any PS in my government could leave office, go out the country, and say a minister carries somewhere on the minister's expense? If that had happened under the PNM, they would all know what to say about it. Because they hold the PNM to a higher standard. And that's a good thing. And that is why in this pandemic, the country could look to the PNM to perform to a higher standard. And if they are surprised that we have performed to a higher standard, we in the PNM are not surprised, because we always operate to a higher standard. Our colonial, not masters, because we don't have masters, we survive. Those who had authority in this country, when they built the country as though they owned it, they left us at independence with some magnificent structures, our legacy, our architecture. For 5 years, the 5 largest budgets ever spent in the history of Trinidad and Tobago, the President's House was abandoned. Whitehall was abandoned. Stallmeyer's Castle was abandoned. Millefleur was abandoned. And apparently, the intention was that they should have been allowed to collapse, because we were almost there. When we went to examine the assignment to repair these buildings, we took out probably about 10 or 15 truckloads of garbage and rotten wood and rotten things from inside President House. Truckloads of rubbish. had to be removed from inside President House. And the collapsed roof that collapsed in 2010, was still there in 2015. We repaired President House for a cost substantially less than they had anticipated and estimated for. They were talking about $240 million. We did it for less than $100 million. We completed the repair of Stonemaier Castle. We repaired Whitehall, and today Whitehall is the seat of the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago in Trinidad and Tobago. When we went to look at the condition of Millefleur, the local engineers were of the view that Millefleur had gone so far that we had to pull it down. And I saw some people almost had tears in their eyes, watching that building and knowing that we had to pull it down. We brought the Cubans in, and we asked the Cubans to have a second look. The Cubans said they could fix it. And we asked the government of Cuba for help. And the government of Cuba lent us technicians, because they do a lot of that in Cuba. And I can announce to you now that in a few days' time, sometime in the not too distant future, we are going to open Whitehall, and Whitehall will become the headquarters of the National Trust in Trinidad and Tobago. Millefleur. And today, the most prestigious drive in Port of Spain is off the boulevard onto the Savannah, and on your left, the Magnificent Seven is alive and well again. Last week I passed outside President House and my wife drew to my attention. There were brides, not a bride, there were brides taking pictures on the ground of President House again. This country is beginning to live again. Minister Dayal Singh spoke about priority. What greater priority can there be in a country than to ensure that when you apportion the resources, you make sure that health is up there, number one. Because if your health is not good, nothing else is good. When we went through that earthquake, 6.7 earthquake, the building I was in, Prime Minister's residence, that building was rolling. It wasn't shaking. The building was rolling. And I had just arrived home. I had just taken off my jacket and I was about to sit on the bed when I heard the earthquake coming. And I stood up at the edge of the bed, looking at the ceiling to see if there's going to be any failure. But my ear was tuned to see if I hear any noise. Because as there's a God above, I could tell you, I was in mortal fear of hearing the tower at the Port of Spain Hospital coming crashing down. Because I happen to know that since 2009, the engineers had said that that tower, the central block in the Port of Spain Hospital, was a danger and it was not engineeringly sound. I read the report as Prime Minister and I asked myself, how could a government have this report that the central block, the largest block of hospital beds in the country, how could they have a report like this? Doctors in there, nurses in there, patients in there, visitors in there, and you have a report like that since 2009. You spend money on all kinds of things, and that did not make the hit parade. There was $16 billion in the account of the NGC. Not $1 was spent on the Port of Spain Hospital, where the engineering report said that that building is a danger to the nation. Any of us could have been in there and get killed, because if you're in there when the earthquake takes place, you might as well be living there. The last $1 billion in the NGC account, when they scrape it out to what it was, they gave it to a contractor purporting to build a water treatment plant in Beetham. Not to start or to build in the hospital, but give a contractor. And it was so well given to the contractor, so scandalously given as the last dying gasp of a corrupt government, that the day after the election, when the PNM won the election, the contractor ran from this country and never set foot back in Trinidad and Tobago again. Left the contract right there and go. How many contractors in Trinidad and Tobago would walk away from $1 billion contract? And the reason why the contractor could have done that is because the contractor was fearful of the law, but the politicians are not fearful of the law in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is why they could come here and tell you they are candidates for elections and they're coming back into government because they want to come back to do the same thing again. The contractor run, you know. But the politicians still here. On August 10th, they're going to the polls, confident that they have safe seat. Confident that they have safe seat because you, the people, will do nothing about that. That for them is not a scandal. You know what the biggest scandal in my government was? There were two big scandals in my government. One is that Shamfa Kojo went to Nassau, did not turn off her phone. The phone pulled down data to the tune of $60-something thousand. That was a big scandal in my government. And the second big scandal was Darrell Smith and some woman, which resulted in his dismissal. And of course, they milked that like Miss Mary Goat. The bottom line is, in my investigation of the Darrell Smith situation, there was no complaint before me, and there was no document before me that had anything to do with sexual harassment. None whatsoever. I communicated with the lawyer who acted for the ministry, and the lawyer confirmed that in his document from the union, where the union complaint was made, and where he acted for the ministry, there was no complaint in there about sexual harassment. There were whispers outside, but in those complaints, none. But I will tell you, prime ministers don't have to tell you why they fire ministers or why they hire ministers. Don't have to. But tonight I will tell you why I fired Darrell Smith. I fired Darrell Smith for interfering improperly in the public service. And this is how it went. He did not want to continue hiring the woman because for reasons given to the PS, she was unsatisfactory in her job. The PS would have been told that, and the PS prepared the dismissal for the person. This is an officer who is serving at the pleasure of the minister, not being part of the public service. While working in the public service, this is a temporary position that ends with the minister's own term. And the minister could hire that person or could get rid of the person. Not capriciously, of course, but if he was dissatisfied, he could have done that. When he did that, and the PS put the letter of dismissal and put the complaints as made by the minister, a letter now exists about the person, unsatisfactory performance and incompetence. He then went to the minister, to the PS, and say, you can't do that. Take out the cause, because if she go to get another job, that will act against her. And the PS did that. The PS took that instruction from the minister and removed the cause of dismissal and violated the industrial relations understanding. You cannot fire somebody and not say what the cause is. The minute the PS did that, they exposed the taxpayer, because the person now went to the union. The union said, we got a nice case here. They're going to the industrial court. The industrial court will obviously rule against the government. An action of dismissal which does not state the cause of dismissal, they have to pay. The ministry hired a lawyer, they negotiated with the union, and the ministry paid for the improper dismissal. It has been converted to all kind of things, including me. I eventually got drawn into it. I who fired the minister for having that happen. There were all kinds of people out there. All kinds of people out there. The same people who have no difficulty with Watson Duke saying he coming to be prime minister because he holding Tobago his seat and he can be 2020 and he can be the prime minister. But Watson Duke as prime minister of Trinidad and Tobago, they left me out. But the same people who drive that, they drive it until at one time I saw a news clip on the main news one night. It was the prime minister who was responsible, accused of all manner of evil. When all that happened there, this minister interfered with the dismissal process, created an environment that caused the taxpayer to dismiss the person and had to pay. There was no payment to cover up no sexual harassment. The payment was the PS letter that went there that did not state a cause of dismissal. So you couldn't argue to the industrial court. Listen, those were the two big scandals in my government. Not that I hired some school child by a telephone operator and put her in charge of the security agency of the country. Where is the equivalent in my government? Not that you had a killing in Arima, you had another killing, and by the weekend you had 5 killings, and you declare a partial state of emergency. You're declaring a state of emergency in a hotspot, not realizing that you have declared a state of emergency in Trinidad and Tobago. Lock up hundreds of people with no evidence. No evidence. Give yourself senior counsel. A law passed in the parliament Friday to make certain actions illegal. You have collected no evidence. But on Monday, you claim you're using the law to lock up people. Policemen are on affidavit in the court saying that they were instructed by the politicians to lock up people like that. And they will find the evidence after. Those were the instructions given to young police officers to go out there and lock up black people because the crime was being committed by black people. And of course, eventually, the director of public prosecution came before the court and vitiated all the charges because there was no supporting evidence. Doesn't matter what the people are, doesn't matter what the record was, there was no supporting evidence to warrant that incarceration and that treatment. So you know what happened? Some of them head for the courthouse and they sued the taxpayer. And since then, we have been paying millions. I think they're getting about either $300,000 or $400,000 a piece as far as the case ends. The Attorney General's office has to pay for the folly of Anand Ramlogan and Kamla Prasad Bisesa to silk. Not khaki, you know, silk. And while they were doing that, they dismissed the Commissioner of Police and the Deputy Commissioner of Police who they imported from abroad. And for 3 years, in fighting the same crime wave, there was no substantive Commissioner of Police. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not making up any of this, you know. We're just taking a walk down memory lane. James Philbert was Commissioner of Police when they came into office. A distinguished police officer, acting in the position of Commissioner of Police. They went and passed this Dutch law that is still there, right? About how you appoint a Commissioner of Police and the leadership and negotiate the Prime Minister's veto out and all that sort of story. But the bottom line is James Philbert was in charge there. He was fired publicly by the Attorney General. Remember that? The Attorney General said he didn't want him there. I don't know since when the Attorney General had such power to end the term of the Commissioner of Police, but James Philbert was jumped out of the office. And then the next time there was a Commissioner of Police, it was after the government changed. And this government, looking for the best person for the job, regardless of where they've been, we ended up hiring as Commissioner of Police a dedicated citizen who was a minister of government in another party prior to the PLM's coming into office. That is our record. And would you believe, with all that behind them, they thought that they will come back into government just beating the crime story, the same crime that caused them to have committed that folly. State of emergency, millions being paid to people. Since you go down memory lane, let me tell you how a little side road on the memory lane. I'm in my constituency office. Prime Minister called me. Keith, you know she's called Mr. Rowley, I'm some demon. Keith, come to my office now. I said, what's wrong, Prime Minister? We discovered a plan to assassinate me. I said, what? I said, where is that information coming from? I said, is the police making a report of that nature? Well, I said, well, I would like to hear it from the police. I didn't go to her office. I said, send the police to talk to me. I didn't go to her office. I didn't want to hear nothing. I didn't want to see nothing. I didn't want to smell nothing. So she sent the police officer to see me. Senior police officer came to see me to tell me about this assassination plot, which I viewed as a very serious matter. As opposition leader, being told that by the Prime Minister, I did not dismiss it. I said, let the police talk to me. I want to hear what they have to say. When the police came to me and told me about it, and they arrested some people, arrested some Muslims. When the police officer came to me, a senior officer at the level of either assistant commissioner or deputy commissioner, like that, I listened to what he had to say, and then I asked him, where is the evidence for this? I said, who are these people? That's the first thing I asked him. I said, who are these people? Tell me, Muslims. I said, where is the evidence for this? He said, well, we don't have the evidence yet, but we are going to collect the evidence. I said, well, you could not be serious. I said, and what are you holding them on? It was during the period of the state of emergency. I said, and what are you holding them on if you have no evidence? What can you charge them with? He said, we're going to get the evidence. I said, well, it means that you're holding them under the powers of the state of emergency. He said, yes. I said, so when the state of emergency ends, you have to let them go. And a bulb went off in his head. He said, yes. So say, so done. That is Kamla Persad Bissessar and the assassination threat. And today I have to see something called some Muslim Federation coming out and talking about this government oppressing Muslims and Muslims supporting the UNC, and Kamla embarrassing and and upsetting our decent, right-thinking fellow citizens of the Muslim faith. They will pollute anything. They will pollute the cloud if they get a chance. With a record like that, you come telling me that Muslims supporting Kamla. I have never heard any religious body in this country come out and say that they're supporting an opposition leader against a prime minister or vice versa. People are free to support who they want to support. But they're so desperate for support. Up the road, they're paying $300 for a walker. If you want to walk with them, that is a day to walk. And of course, you're getting this trumped up support in this way. And once you start that, in case you all don't know, all over the world where they've had problems with religion and politics, that's where it starts. That's where it starts. Certain leaders, certain chieftains drop the bucket down with certain political arrangements and can't take it up. Divisive, explosive, and dangerous. As simple as you see that there. Trinidad and Tobago has not had that history. They're bringing it to us now. Bringing it to us and fabricating accusations against the government of the day. There are countries all over the world where that is happening, and the outcome is always explosive and dangerous. But that is the offering of Kamla Persad Bissessar. The PNM engages in no such activity, because if we win an election, we go forward with boundless faith in our destiny. And if we lose it, we go to the opposition and plan to come again. But they are mortally afraid of the loss that's going to come on August 10th, because they want to prevent the police from concluding their investigations, which are far and wide in Trinidad and Tobago, over their own conduct. And for those of you who believe that the conduct of which you are aware has had no complexion in law enforcement in this country, you're wrong. The wheels of justice turn slowly, but they do turn. Don't for 1 minute believe that they've gotten away scot-free with what they have done. That's why they're so desperate. And they have money to burn. We don't have that. What we have are you, the people, and candidates like Jason Williams to come to you to represent you in the parliament. They like talking about procurement. No government minister here has been before a court of law where the court ruled that in disposing of government property, the minister acted improperly. None of my ministers faced that. That is on the record against a minister of planning of the last government. But enough of them, away with them. Let's look at our future. We've got a pandemic sweeping across the world. The richest country in the world today, head bowed and knees bent in the face of a pandemic that is rampaging. I think there are only 6 states in America where the pandemic is not increasing in intensity. Would you believe that? Only 6 in the northeast corner. And of that 6, one of them went through probably the worst that we've known so far, New York, where I have a child living in New York. That country is spending trillions of dollars trying to fund itself to stay afloat as the virus runs around from coast to coast, from sea to shining sea. But they have the ability to print money. The US dollar is printed by the US government. The Federal Reserve can print as much as they want. We have to earn every US dollar that we spend. We got to produce something for it. They can just print it in a printing press, nice and shiny. We have had to borrow significant amounts of money to keep the society afloat, to keep jobs in place, to prevent a total collapse. So what we have now are liabilities going forward. Even before the pandemic, we had difficulty finding money for a development program because our revenues would have fallen from 50-odd billion to approximately 40 billion. We have had to manage this country in the last 5 years with, in the first year after we came in, we were managing it with $20 billion less than the previous year. So when you hear people saying they didn't get nothing, there was nothing to get except to try and stay alive and to give ourselves a tomorrow. On the way out of office after 5 years of spending the 5 largest budget in the history of this country, the UNC was facing defeat. So just spending money didn't guarantee you an election victory. They came to Tobago in the last THA election on Northern London. They spent $60 million in Tobago. They had 4 seats, we had 8. They had 4 seats and we had, yeah, it's 12, yeah. We had 8, they had 4. $60 million they spent there. And when the game was over, they didn't have 4 seats. They had 0. Money can't buy me love. So all the money they're spending now in this campaign, trying to buy your love, they're still nervous, because the last thing they want on election night is to hear that you have done the correct thing and you've made the right choice of the People's National Movement. That's the last thing they want to hear. and it has nothing to do with you and the future of the country. If ever there was a time when this country required serious leadership, it is now, because we are on very slippery slopes. This is not the time to be irresponsible. This is not the time to be reckless and deceitful. This is the time to face facts and walk out into the storm confidently. There's a storm ahead. We make our living selling certain produce in the world, producing certain items in this country. In every single area, we're in a bad position. Not because of anything we've done, but because the markets in which we trade have changed considerably. Our biggest earner, LNG. The earnings of this country was at its highest ever in 2008. At that time, we were getting $13 a unit for LNG. Today, it's $1.60, if you could find a buyer. Oil went to $130 a barrel. When we came into government, it started at $40 a barrel, and it went down to $29. And after all those earnings in that period of 10 to 15, when they were out of office with nothing to show for their tenure and facing defeat, they quickly agreed to try to bribe public servants with a big pay increase costing $6 billion, and they left town. Two things happened there. One, public servants got an increase, and therefore they were earning now more. The percentage increase applied to their monthly income. And the back pay had to be paid $6 billion. We did that. It was paid, like borrowed money. They were paid, but it is still there to be paid for by the taxpayer. So we still have to earn that money sometime down the road to clear off those debts. And now when this COVID comes and threatens to shut us down completely and destroy us for good, all that we invested in our economy, we had to find a way to keep the liquidity high in the country, to keep money in people's hands so they could go and buy food, so they could keep doing the things that they do to maintain some semblance of life with comfort, some element of comfort. That was paid for by debt. Because we didn't have a current account in which to dip and pay for it. But we had to find a way to keep the economy afloat. So what we've done, we've borrowed money to do that. And what you need to do going forward is to have a roadmap, to stay a course that makes sense, that keeps you in with reality, focus on reality, that you don't do what you ought not to be doing, and you don't do anything other than do more with less. This government has demonstrated how to do more with less. And for that reason alone, the PNM is the right choice at this time. So, very many people in this country go to work in the morning and they work for the day and they get paid at payday. They don't understand that they're being paid based on spending in the Caribbean islands. Our manufacturing sector is supported not only by our local purchase, but in a huge way by the purchase of products in Trinidad and Tobago, made here, exported to CARICOM markets. What is the situation out there now? With tens of millions of people unemployed in America, which has become a very hostile place for West Indians, in that huge amount of unemployed people are Trinidadians and Tobagoans and other West Indian people. That is money not coming into the region. But worse, tourism is the bulk of their economy out there. Tourism right now and for the foreseeable future going forward for the next 2 or possibly 3 years, some people say the next 5 years, tourism is as good as dead. Planes are not flying. The area from which tourists come are under the hammer of the pandemic. So you don't have tourists coming from Europe and from Canada and from the United States as they normally would come. And if they even want to come, there are no planes flying because many people today are afraid to go on an aeroplane because of the virus. And that being so, our market in the Caribbean, the level of consumption of our products will contract. We're still producing, we're still exporting a bit, and we're still hoping that we have some kind of a future out there, even if the current arrangement is not as good as it used to be. So these are the kinds of issues, and that is why today I was so pleased to have taken part in what we did in Moruga, because food security came in front of us as a major issue when, under the pandemic, people who would sell us rice in the normal circumstance said, hello, we have no rice to export. In the first few days of the pandemic, we tried to borrow money in a particular market, and we were told by the banks, we are not lending sovereigns. Our lending for the moment has to be at home. Big international banks. And for a moment, when the Minister of Finance reported that to me, I said, what is the world coming to? Is it that we will not be able to access the international capital market? Is that what we have reached? Fortunately, even though the markets have declined, that arrangement did not hold for too long. So ladies and gentlemen, these are dangerous times. These are serious times. And this is a time when you decide in whose hand you will put the precious business of preserving lives and livelihood in Trinidad and Tobago. Your vote is a serious undertaking. And anybody who comes and tries to buy your vote is a crook. Start with that. And they represent a party of crooks, because buying vote tells you something about the people. How they get into office is how they will govern. And anybody who tells you not to vote is even worse. Because voter suppression is calling on you to be most irresponsible at a time when what is called for is responsible conduct. I care who you vote for. That's why I lead this PNM and I ask you to vote for the Balize, to vote for the PNM. I care about that, but the right is yours. The choice is yours. And if you choose not to vote, what you are saying is that you don't care what happens to the country, what happens to you, what happens to your children, what happens to your neighbors. That's what you're saying. As long as you get some little kakara that somebody give you, irresponsibility could cost us dear. Ladies and gentlemen, in this campaign, every time we meet like this, one or two ministers will report to you on the performance of this government. On my right is a minister who can tell you that she guided this country in a difficult period to the best Carifesta ever had. It is now the gold standard. It is now the gold standard to be copied by the rest of CARICOM going forward. On my left is our Minister of Health, who guided us through and is guiding us through a pandemic. I would lead them every night out to talk to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, not telling you about the disgusting behavior of those who came before, never see, come see, and behave like never see, come see, but telling you how we have conducted your business and asking you to allow us to continue for your benefit, and the choice would be yours. So tonight, I want to ask Barataria, as we gird our loins, strengthen minds, strengthen the PNM, strengthen Trinidad and Tobago, give us Jason Williams. Barataria, give us Jason Williams. Barataria San Juan, in this fight in 2020 for the soul of Trinidad and Tobago, to walk that road that we are planning to walk to survive in Trinidad and Tobago. You don't want to be in the opposition, Barataria. You want to be in the government where we are making decisions for you. They've had their fun. They've had their opportunity. They've disgraced this country. And many of them, with questions to answer, ought to have no place in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, far less in the cabinet. Tonight, I am confident that on the night of the 10th of August, 2020, when the results are in, when the results coming from Sandy Grande, from Tobago, from Point Fortin, from Carenage, from Caroni, when the results come in, you, the people in Barataria, you will bring Jason Williams home with the PNM, and you will say, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, great is the PNM, and we shall prevail.
Yes, Barataria, how you feeling? Somebody say, great is the PNM. Great is the PNM. Right, here we go, here we go.
All will be fine. Look, we made the right choice every time. Still a job to be done and a race to be won, and we know we will win every time. Just keep the faith, heads up high. We're together in this, you and I. Yes, the job will be done and the race will be won, and we know we will win every time. And we go vote for the love of we country. We go vote to protect the treasury. Vote it's only Dr. Rowley, the right choice for TNT. PNM is the choice, PNM is the voice, PNM only way on election day is the right choice at the right time. Hands in the air for the police. Hey. Introducing my friend, the General Sasha. We voting PNM. Anyway, right choice, I'm proud leader. The battle for our nation, your life matter, yeah. We leadership, we promise to forever more. But we are them and everything will be better, yeah. Straight out 95 years of government. Never again will we allow mismanagement. We are them is here to say, yeah, no, it's permanent. Loyal to the flag and never out to establishment. Who them try to drink and sell out. But them can't buy my food, me not bow out. They better move when we're army a run out. All these simple people will get put out. Dr. Rowley, a leader phenomenal. The USC full of pirates and criminal. Send for the doctor, the state is critical. Search it up of our and this country's political structure. Send for the doctor. Put a hold on best, and a hold on best, and a hold on best. Put a hold on anyway, a vote in PNM. Sign my name, a PNM, a PNM, a PNM. How will you sign my name? A PNM, a vote in PNM. It's a PNM power, a positive healing power. Moving forward together, introducing Rishi, my brother.
All of we is one family. All of we is one family. Working together to build this country. When the world was breaking, everyone agreed. When the world was breaking, we happy for seen. And that is why we voted for our country.
Super, 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 super.
Sprinkle water, red. Blessings from the higher, red. The sweetness is here, red. Sprinkle everywhere, red. Where your belly's here, red. Where you got the ice, where you ride, where you ride, where you ride, where you ride, where you wear. The water, sprinkle all around. Sprinkle, 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 sprinkle.
Thank you.
Keep them flags up. Keep them flags up.
Great is the PNM, ladies and gentlemen. The PNM is the right choice. It is the only choice. Thank Thank you very much to all of our speakers and future MPs, and to all of you who made this meeting the resounding success that it was, especially you, the young people. We remind you that we will rally safe and we will rally right. Look out for many more of these meetings in the coming days. Look out for your 41 candidates across communities in Trinidad and Tobago. And remember, on Monday the 10th of August, the real Red Rally will take place when you come out in your thousands and make the right choice and vote PNM. Thank you, Barataria San Juan. Thank you, Trinidad and Tobago. Great is the PNM. Get home safely.
To protect the treasury, it's only Dr. Rowley, the right choice for TNT. PNM is the choice, PNM is the...
That was a paid political broadcast.